So it's been 1 month since Samsung launched the biggest redesign of the Galaxy Watch in a very long time. And it was a very polarizing design. People talked about the pros and cons of it. They thought it looked a lot like the Apple Watch Ultra. Some people thought it was a great redesign. Some people missed the rotating bezel. There was just so much talk and hype about this watch that I had to wear it every single day for more than a month now to really get a better idea of what it's really like to wear this watch. Not just the specs. We're going to take a step away from the spec sheets in this video and talk about the nuances and the genuine experience of this watch, as well as some very in-depth accuracy testing that I've done on a variety of different workouts to test out the GPS, the sleep tracking, the heart rate, everything you'll need to know about this watch. And as you may already know that I said about the Galaxy Watch 7, this is incredibly accurate with the heart rate and the GPS. I'm very excited to get into that, but I want to go through this in a kind of pro-con layout for this video. So let's start off with a con here. I like working out this watch, and having the third button's useful, but the buttons aren't optimized for working out. When you're in a run, the top and bottom buttons work as they always do for the smartwatch. They'll open like Samsung Pay and Google Assistant and things that I don't need while I'm running. Instead, I really wish they worked as an up button and a down button to go through the workout pages. I think that would just make so much more sense. Getting to a positive, in my original review, I said the strap was not particularly comfortable for sleeping, and it felt like kind of a heavier strap. But realistically, the longer I wear it, the more I get used to it, and I actually really do like it. I opted for the black strap with the titanium gray. It's not a default option that Samsung offers, but when you swap them in, I just think this is a really nice look for this watch. Getting into another positive, you can actually get some lug attachments on here. So even though Samsung has their new proprietary strap and their new little dynamic lug is what they're calling it, you don't have to use that. You can get the adapter and use all of your older watch straps on this one. However, I do like how the new ones fit, and I'm not actually going to go and swap out for the older ones. Some drawbacks, the marine band, even though, like I said, I do like it, one weird little quirk with this is that after the clasp, it goes through this little metal hook, and there's always a piece sticking up. So you get it caught on things, your sleeves and stuff like that. It's not the most well thought out strap as far as keeping that little end bit from sticking out too much. Another con is that even though the straps are supposed to be like easier to get on and off, I find it's easier to take them off, but getting them on, like you really kind of have to push it a little more than you'd expect. It's not the best design in my opinion. Not a pro or a con, but just a statement about the battery life. Kind of as expected, it doesn't get 100 hours under normal use. That's only battery saving, which if you're buying a watch for $650, you probably want to use the watch, not throttle it down to get longer battery life. So for me, I'm genuinely usually getting about 2.5 days of battery life, and that's with about a 1 hour of GPS workout every day. I'm outside a lot, so I do have the brightness up pretty high when I'm out there. So 2.5 days is far better than the charge every day battery life of other Apple Watches and Galaxy Watches and Pixel Watches. A positive with this watch, this is a subtle one, and a lot of people won't even talk about it, but it's something that I think matters a lot, and that is the watch faces that are available with this. So the newer watch faces, I personally love them. Like this one right here, it's very customizable. Like the color, the layout, everything about it. I chose to have like the time, the weather below that, a compass, my heart rate, as well as the UV index. Being somebody who gets burned a lot outside in the summer, having that on a watch, it's like just so clutch when I'm out there on a boat or something like that. So this watch, like the watch face is just exactly what I was looking for. It's also very easy to read at a glance. A con, however, is that sometimes I do find that I hit that quick button, even though there's a nice guard around that. Sometimes I find that I hit it if I'm like golfing, for example, wearing a glove on your left wrist. If you flex your wrist back, it definitely is a possibility that you're hitting that, being in the middle of the watch compared to other Galaxy watches where you have one on the top and one on the bottom. The middle button is just much easier to hit. Now this portion of the video is sponsored by Best Buy. Of course, I buy most of my tech from Best Buy, and if you're looking to get a Galaxy Watch Ultra for yourself, or maybe any other Samsung device, say a Galaxy Ring for example, or maybe both, like the Galaxy Ring and Galaxy Watch work very well together. They have cool features, the double pinch feature on the ring. Of course, wearing the watch with the ring extends the ring's battery life by 30%. Just a lot of cool perks like that. And if you're looking to get them, I'll have links below to Best Buy. You can check out the latest pricing, the latest trade-in values, the latest promotions. Like for example, they have a great promo going on right now where if you want to get the sizing kit for your Galaxy ring, because obviously a ring is not an adjustable thing, you need to get the right size, you can get that. It's $10 for the kit, but then they give you a $10 e-gift certificate back that you can then use to, say, purchase the ring or put that towards the watch or anything else you're getting from Best Buy. Now, of course, like I said, they also have all the specs on there, so anything I don't mention in this video, head on over, check out those links, and you can read more about these different watches, check out the different colors, and obviously same thing with the ring and everything else. So thanks to Best Buy for sponsoring this portion of the video. Now, let's get back to what I was talking about with the Galaxy Watch Ultra. So taking a look at the first heart rate comparison here, the red line is the Polar H10 heart rate strap and the blue is the Galaxy Watch Ultra. And this was a 34 minute run. I tried to go in every single heart rate zone to see how it performed in different areas. In the beginning, you can see very slight lag, but for the most part, very close on these first two hills. And then it really did very well in zone 3 until I got to these two hills here, or really these two outliers. You could see a significant space here and a significant space there, showing an inaccuracy. After that, zone 4 and 5, it did a very good job, really lockstep with the Polar H10 until I stopped, went down to a walk to bring my heart rate down. Again, very slight lag here on the way down, but it caught the bottom very well. It had this little peak on a hill. It did this very well. This little hill here as well. I think I actually jogged to pass some guy with a dog. So that actually nailed that. And then finishing out really perfect with the Polar H10. So this I would consider to be a very impressive heart rate graph. Going on to the next one, this is a much shorter run. This is only a 9-minute run, and there was a very significant sprint in the middle just to kind of demonstrate the difference between them. So here we have 3 lines. We've got the Polar H10, which is red. We have the Galaxy Watch, once again, which is blue. And then the green line is the Garmin Epix Pro Gen 2, an $1,100 watch from it's basically their flagship from Garmin. And as you can see here in the beginning, the Garmin did slightly better on the first kind of pickup of the heart rate, which this is common for optical heart rate sensors on your wrist to always be a little bit behind the heart rate strap. So that's not uncommon. Then the second heart rate increase, the pretty significant one right here, you can see the Galaxy Watch did a much better job of catching up. Within less than, I would say, 1 minute, it was up to the right speed, whereas the Garmin definitely lagged by a significant amount until they both caught up at the 5-minute mark, and then they were accurate for the remainder of the run. Going on to the third chart here, this again has the Garmin, the Polar, and the Galaxy Watch here, and this is an older run. I think I had a fit issue, as we'll talk about right there in a second, but starting off, the first 8.5 minutes were essentially perfect between all 3 of these. Again, in the beginning, the Galaxy Watch seemed to be more accurate than the Garmin on that heart rate increase, slightly, actually significantly closer to the Polar. Then the first interval, you could see the Garmin was perfect and the Galaxy Watch had some missing data, as you could see those little blank points in the line. So perhaps that was a fit issue, or perhaps because this is an older run, maybe an update resolved this issue. I have not seen this happen since that early run. This was essentially the day I got the watch. Then going down here, you could see they absolutely all nailed the bottom. That was absolutely perfect. The whole way down was very accurate. The heart rate increase here, the Garmin was actually, again, not as good as the Galaxy Watch until the very top. Slight deviation up here where they were both kind of neck and neck, the Garmin and the Galaxy Watch, both lagging behind the Polar. Then going down, you could see they both got the bottom well. The third peak, the Galaxy Watch was significantly better. Then the last little valley was very accurate, and finishing it out, I would say the Garmin was slightly better at the very end here. I'm not sure what the Galaxy Watch did right there, but for the most part, I would say this is incredibly impressive for all devices. Now, going into the actual maps of them, let's compare the GPS on this run right here. A very short run, a fairly easy one. You can see if you're using your phone, this is the kind of accuracy you could expect with the red line. That is the Galaxy S24 Ultra. The watches are both significantly more accurate than that. And so looking at this, they both did a fantastic job. They finished both runs within 1/100th of a mile of each other, so both incredibly consistent and accurate between the Garmin and the Galaxy. And then looking at this one, this is again an older run, but I'm using this graph again because this did a fantastic job demonstrating just how accurate these devices actually are. So keep in mind, the Garmin, even though the heart rate was not quite as good as the Galaxy Watch, I would say it's kind of the gold standard for GPS accuracy. That's Garmin's bread and butter. They are a GPS company. And so seeing that this was keeping up with the Garmin, I think is very, very impressive. Minimal deviations anywhere on this entire run. This was a 33-minute run, as we talked about before, and the blue lines, being the Galaxy, was always between the green lines for almost the entire run, meaning that it was essentially exactly as accurate as that. So I think that is very, very impressive. In general, kind of conclusion on this, the GPS and the heart rate of the Galaxy Watch is incredibly accurate according to my testing. Another drawback, as we all knew, it still needs a rotating mechanism. Like, I don't use the digital bezel because either you're outside and your hands are sweaty or you just washed your hands and they're like a little wet and you just want to kind of scroll through and see those tiles there. You can't really do that. And so, I don't know. I find that it's not something that I ever use. I wish it had a rotating crown or a rotating bezel. Either one it would just make so much sense on this watch. A positive with this watch, the pinch gesture is absolutely awesome. It's something that, you know, features like this, when they come out, you don't know if it's going to be a gimmick, if it's going to be something that you actually use. And that's why I like making these 1 month later videos, because that's when you really find out after a month, like, is that a feature you're actually going to use? And it works very well. I use it all the time. Every time there's a calendar notification or an alarm or anything like that, you look at it, you double pinch, and it silences it, or it snoozes it, or whatever you have it set to do. Also, it does prompt you to do that, so it reminds you, like, you see an alarm and it's like, hey, double pinch and you can make this go away. I think that's a pretty great feature there. A drawback, talking about gestures, the knock gesture, I had to disable it. It's really cool. I have it opening up my recent apps, but sometimes it just, too many things act like a knock. Like if I'm working outside or doing something, a lot of times my watch will vibrate and just open up my recent apps because it thought I did that gesture when I wasn't trying to. So one little tip I came across for this watch is you should go into the Wear app on your phone, go to settings, go to press and hold, and then select Assistant instead of Bixby. That way, when you're using this watch, you can use a genuinely superior assistant, in my opinion, being Google Assistant compared to Bixby, and I just find that that's a huge help there. Also, while you're in those settings, I do recommend changing the start action, which is the orange button on the side, to double press instead of single press, and that kind of fixes that problem I was saying where I flex my wrist back and press that. Single press will do nothing then, and you have to double press to open your workouts or whatever you have that button set to do. Another drawback, this is not something that I had for my unit, but I did see some reports of misaligned displays, which is a pretty big quality control red flag on Samsung's part. If those are true, at least from what I saw on X and on Instagram, some people were getting it in like the display, which is not centered with the tick marks on the watch. A positive though, the durability does seem to be absolutely awesome on this device. After using it for a month, I have 0 scratches on this. I have no dents on this. I wore this in pretty much every environment I could think of. I even swam in the ocean with it, and like the buttons, perfect actuation. They don't get sticky. Everything just works well on this watch, and it seems to be far more durable than many other watches I've worn in the past. In addition, another positive, I didn't expect this, but it really does not collect much dust at all along the corners. I really thought the corner of the outer bezel, so the circular part, but not the square part, right in there, I thought there was going to be a lot of dust collecting in that corner, and there's really not. A negative, going back to that side, unfortunately, this does not charge on Samsung phones. They made room for the larger sensor on the back, which is great, that's a huge improvement, but a huge disappointment that I cannot charge this on the back of my phone. When I travel, that's typically what I do, and being only a 2.5 to 3.5 day battery life, if I'm traveling, I'm going to have to bring a charger for my watch now. Now, next up, kind of getting away from the pro-con layout, I want to talk about some different aspects of using this watch. The first one being fitness. I still really never use the race feature. I really thought I would because I do tend to run a lot of the same routes when I'm running, or at least a lot of the same trails, but I tend to run different distances every time I do it, so the race feature just never really made sense for me personally, but I could see it being useful. A downside with running though is that, or biking in general, is that if you're outside and you're wearing polarized sunglasses, there are some angles where the display is a little bit trickier to read than some other watches out there. It's not a super uncommon aspect with polarized glasses, but it's something you do want to be aware of. Also, I do love the trackback feature. If I'm running particularly in a new city, for example, I can go into just swipe over, tap on settings, and start trackback, so I could run without my phone anywhere I want in a new city and just always find my way back to the hotel, using that feature. The next aspect of using this was sleep tracking. Being that we have a longer battery life on this, more than just half a day or 1 day, we can actually get some genuine sleep tracking. And so it's something that I've been doing for quite a few nights now. And Samsung does sleep tracking in what I think is actually a pretty good way. So they start off with a very high level. They give you a sleep score and they give you a sleep animal. Sleep animal doesn't mean a whole lot to me. They said I was lying and they just said good sleep. That's kind of all it said. But what I like is a sleep score, kind of a general index of how well you sleep. However, I do find this a little bit biased towards higher scores compared to something like Whoop, which is a little bit more aggressive and gives you much lower scores for your sleep. Kind of a pro-con, if you really want to optimize your sleep, having a lower score kind of makes you take your own medicine and fix your own sleep and kind of makes it more realistic. Whereas the higher sleep score, on the other hand, has positives in that you wake up and looking at it says 92 and you're like, you know what, I am ready for today. I can do this. It's kind of a nice little reassurance rather than the harsh reality that Whoop gives you that's yeah, you got a 65 last night. And then you're like, well, it gets in your head and maybe it impacts your day. So having the positive bias, I think, is actually kind of better for this watch to do. But when you tap on the sleep in the app, it really dives into a lot, not just your sleep time and your sleep score and your animal, but you can look into your sleep stages, as most watches do. You can look into the blood oxygen. They do have sleep apnea detection, which I did use. I've seen other people that found out they had sleep apnea using this watch. I never tested for it until getting this watch. Fortunately, it said I do not have sleep apnea, and I was pretty happy to see that, honestly. They also have skin temperature as a chart, so you can really look at what happened throughout the night. You can look at your heart rate variability as well, something that I personally put a lot of value on. I like seeing, higher heart rate variability, especially when I'm working out, to figure out how I recovered. So rather than letting this do all the analyzing for me, it's nice you can dig into that data a little bit deeper. However, I did find that sometimes, especially blood oxygen is where I see this the most, there are gaps in the data. You don't see it nearly as much with heart rate, but a lot of times throughout the night, there are segments that just have no blood oxygen data. And I wear the watch not super tight, but tight enough that it's definitely snug. It's on there. It's not moving around, not spinning around my wrist. And that's something that I'm a little bit concerned with. I don't know if other watches just interpolate and they have the same problem, or if this one is kind of a Galaxy-specific problem we're seeing. We do see something similar with the heart rate when you're on a workout, when you're running. And again, I think other watches might just interpolate, so maybe it's just being a little bit more honest here, or maybe it's the sensor's too large and it loses contact with your skin there. I'm not entirely sure, but that's gonna be interesting to see what Samsung actually says about that. I mean, other features on here that we've been seeing for a while, like snoring detection, pretty nice as long as your phone's nearby. But wrapping up the sleep category of this video, one thing I wish there was a morning briefing. When I wake up, I have to navigate over to sleep, see how I slept last night, navigate over to weather, see what that's looking like today, navigate over to my calendar and see what's going on today. And that's all stuff that the watch should do for me in a morning briefing. It's something Garmin's been doing for a while. I know other watches do something similar, and having that on here, I think, is such an easy add that I'm really hoping Samsung does include in the future. That would just be so useful to have a morning glance, all right, how did I sleep? What's on my calendar? What's the weather? And maybe what notifications did I miss last night? Now, kind of pivoting a little bit, shifting gears here, the speed of this device. I know some people said it was laggy. For me, I haven't experienced any significant lag with this. Maybe it's the latest software that I'm running right now after a firmware update, a software update rather, but I'm not having any issues. You can swipe around and you can see it runs smoothly. I did a speed comparison with the Galaxy Watch 6. This is significantly faster with opening apps, and I think in general, it does feel like a snappy enough watch for me to use. I don't have any complaints with that. As far as charging goes though, definitely not snappy there. It charges in about 1.5 hours, and that's with the fast charger as well, going from 0 to 100%. That's a really long time to wait. It's not just plug it in while you shower, so instead of going 2.5 or 3 days, what I do is I do charge it for 10, 15, 20 minutes whenever I get an opportunity if I'm showering or whatever. So it kind of does top it off a little bit like that and gives me maybe 4, 5, 6 days, but again, eventually you do have to plug it in for like an hour and a half. And then of course there is the topic of price. This is not like a 1 month later thing. Price has been around since, the day it came out. I honestly do expect there to be a lot of sales in the future. $650 is a very interesting price because I think a lot of people look at that and say, all right, well, that's like more than double the base Galaxy Watch 6 or Watch 7 rather. Just get that. And for many people, sure, just get the Watch 7. There's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of people are better off choosing the Watch 7. That's what I said in my Watch 7 video. But even though this is more expensive, in my opinion, this is Samsung's best smartwatch for fitness tracking, for battery life, and just about everything else. And I would recommend it to anyone who does like, races or sprint triathlons or anything else, but doesn't necessarily compete. Like you're not in the top 10. You're not trying to beat other people. You're just maybe, for example, doing a half Ironman and your goal is to complete it. Or maybe your goal is to get under like, 6, 7, whatever hours. This could be the perfect device for you because while it works really well and very, very accurately for that, it also is a great everyday smartwatch. It's probably the best Android smartwatch in my opinion. The only thing missing is the rotating bezel, and I think that would make it the ultimate best smartwatch for Android users. Personally, I've been a huge fan of the Garmin Epix Pro Gen 2, but since I've been using this for the past month, I'm genuinely not really looking forward to switching back to Garmin. In fact, I might just keep this on my wrist until something better comes out in the future. I don't know, I like this watch a lot, in case you couldn't tell from this video. So yeah, that's my take on the Galaxy Watch Ultra after 1 month. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below, and since you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing.